Welcome in. We've made it through week 10. On to week 11. Well, after tonight. On to week 11. And it could be worse.
Yeah. Bittersweet. It's always, this is like the time of year when hopefully it's not happening to people, but people start, stop paying attention as much, the casual players, if you play in leagues like that. So it's always a little bittersweet time of year. So, but playoffs are coming.
Yeah, they are. And so, as usual, Mike Burland, Jason Draven, in here just to annoy you, give you our picks for potential pickups, who we like, we're streaming. What our goal is this week is to get you guys set up because the Giants, so Daniel Jones is off this week. Kyler Murray is off this week for the Cardinals. Baker Mayfield, who's probably been carrying a lot of people this year, is off this week. And then Bryce Young / Andy Dalton. More importantly, Chuba Hubbard from that team is the one who's really been the one carrying you.
And don't we have so what's next week, week 11? So I think it's 12 and 14. We have 2 6-team buys, like 6 teams on bye in week 12 and week 14. So you can start preparing a little bit for those times as well. I think there's some good teams in week 14 as well, but obviously it's going to be very competitive those weeks, the waiver wire, so you can kind of get ahead of it if you can. Obviously you have to be able to have that ability to do that, but never a bad idea to think about that.
Yeah. So with that kind of in mind, the trade deadline is likely this week in a lot of leagues. So be aware of that. If you're not able to trade somebody, kind of slimming down your roster to what you need, what is going to help you get through those weeks specifically. Could be big losses due to it if you're struggling at all. So that in mind, let's get into quarterback. And the first one surprised me because I wasn't ready to put it down, and yet it's just it's amazing to me. Derek Carr, 27.3% rostered, tore up the Falcons to be the current quarterback 6 on this week. Absolutely just blew up with MVS catching all 3 of his passes. Didn't expect that to happen. Going for over 100 yards and scoring 2 touchdowns is just insane.
2, yeah.
Even without Chris Olave. So we'll see if that ends up being the new Shaheed. And then Tipton was the one who was on the field but did not see a darn thing. They actually had another touchdown called back from Taysom Hill on a massive play. And so with the matchup, it's so much easier to go with Carr because he will be facing off against the Browns, who've been less than spectacular when it comes to their defense. We'll see, since they are also coming off a bye, how that works out. And I'm just going to stick in that game because the other guy I'm looking at is Jameis Winston. They named him the starter again, 8.8% rostered. Should have an awesome opportunity to come back. We'll see how everybody's health is. And then, of course, we just saw Cousins do well against this team. He only put 11.2 fantasy points up, but it's because they ran the ball in 3 times. So that hurts him, which could happen if Chubb is back to his self. That could be an issue for Winston, but that's not really Winston's MO. So that in mind, those are the 2 I'm looking at. Mike, you like those, or you have some other options for, I guess, the wider audience?
Yeah. There's a lot of good options. I mean, Russell Wilson, I think, is going to slowly be added more and more. He had a 3 touchdown game, only 195 yards passing, but he's been pretty good. I think he's averaging right around like 250 to 240 passing yards. And he has 6 touchdowns in the 3 games that he started this year. So, and a rushing touchdown. So he gets the Ravens, who in years past we would be terrified of. But heading into this week, they were the second best matchup for quarterbacks. And I imagine that only went up with the Burrow, Burrow chase. Yeah. So Ravens are a defense that, you're going to have to probably throw or, to keep up with them and chase points, and you can throw on them. So I kind of like Russell Wilson this week as a streamer. So Daniel Jones is out there. I mean, he always has that rushing floor. I think he had a rushing touchdown this last week. He's never going to get much passing. Yeah. Even then it wasn't great, but because he threw 2 interceptions and didn't really pass for much. That's going to happen for Daniel Jones. Again, they're on a bye, so this is more for looking ahead, but
great rest of season schedule.
Yeah, exactly. And then Trey Lance, I mean, maybe he gets and he could just absolutely suck, but we know what he can do on the ground. I mean, at least we think we know. So, it doesn't take much. Like that's why we talk about guys like Daniel Jones, because the rushing production is really it's kind of broken for quarterbacks in fantasy football. So you don't really need to do much to the air if you can rush for 50 yards and a touchdown. So a lot of good options out there for sure. So I think you should be able to get by if you were starting Kyler or Baker these last few weeks.
Yeah, I want to see him actually take over the job, which they should do because of the fact that team can't really do anything, and you might as well see what you have in him if you're going to keep him around or not. More than likely, I'm guessing that's probably not, but
yeah, I mean, they gave up a 4th-round pick for him. It's like, see what you have at least. Maybe you can trade him. I mean, I think he's a free agent, but still, like, see what you have. Might as well. It's not Cooper Rush, that's for sure.
Yeah. All right. Anybody your thing, no, Steve? We hit all the big points.
Yeah, not widely available, but available in 42% of leagues. Bo Nix. Since week 5, Bo Nix has been the QB5 on the season. Has not scored less than 14 points in a game during that stretch. Has gone over 20 3 times. To your point, Mike, just put up 18 2 weeks ago against Baltimore, and then 16 this week in a losing effort against Kansas City. He's got Atlanta, Vegas, and Cleveland before their bye in week 14. So pretty strong stretch the next 3 weeks. And then when he comes out of the bye, he's got Indianapolis, the Chargers, and Cincinnati. So nothing scary really on that list except for maybe the Chargers.
Okay. I was about to say rude, but
5 of his 6 remaining games. Like the scariest part is that week 14 he has a bye. That's the scariest part of that whole thing. Week 16 against he had a bad matchup against KC and a bad matchup against New Orleans, and he still had decent outings. So he's never really lost you a week if you were actually playing him. But like I said, QB5 in the last 2 months, basically. So I think that'd be a solid pickup.
Yeah, for sure. And we keep throwing him on here because he does keep just kind of hanging around. He rushes, which is always a plus, has good defense, and is always in the game. So they're going to throw. And we've already seen that their running game is suspect at best.
Yeah.
So
yeah, what's I'm just checking right now. Drake May's roster percentage is 16%. You kind of look at his numbers. So he's basically started 5 games, but he got knocked out pretty early in one of them. Like you look at those 4 games that he's started and played the whole game, he's like on pace for like 4,000 yards passing, 30 touchdowns, and like 750 yards rushing. Like he's on doing like Jaden Daniels stuff, And so I don't mind Drake May as like he gets more and more comfortable. Gets hopefully some weapons that start stepping up a little bit more. But they get the Rams, Dolphins, Colts. Like I don't hate that schedule for him the next 3 weeks. So kind of like Drake May as well.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, all solid names. All right, so add a quarterback into running backs. Again, go and bring it up. It is cuffing time. We talked about slimming down your rosters. It's mostly so you can pick up handcuffs. No surprise, Tyler Algier remains my number 1. For anybody who is managing Bijan, he is a must roster. We've seen even this past week, he put up 5 yards a carry, continues to put up 5 yards a carry. One of the best runners, high broken tackle rate. However, he can't score to save his life. So that's a 1+ is that Bijan's coming in there and finishing that job, thankfully. Because I'd be nervous otherwise.
when they gave him those 3 carries. Like, what are you doing? Give it to
Like-
Bijan.
And sure enough, it only took 1 for Bijan. Not a baby. Way to get it done.
I think he only has like 5 or 6 carries inside the 5, and he scored on like
1.
80% of them, Bijan.
Oh, yeah.
And Tyler Algier scored on like 1 of his however many he's had, which I think
It's
is
also
more than
been
Bijan.
5.
5, okay. So, but I think it's just 1 for 5, and Bijan's like 4 for 5 or 4 for 6 or something. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, come on, guys. Like, I'm telling you, we need that fantasy. Every team needs a fantasy timeout. So your running back busts off a 80-yard run. They get tackled at the 1-yard line. They can call a timeout. It's an extra timeout for fantasy, and they let that guy get a breather, and he comes in. And I just hate that when they take him out after they do all the work, but it's never going to change.
Yeah. Extremely frustrating. I mean, it's just how it goes. So The other thing I'm going to bring up is K-Makers. 25.1% rostered. Aaron Jones got hit in the ribs. He said he's going to likely be on the play. Akers has kind of taken over the role. He actually saw a passing opportunity as well this week. And it really looks like he'd be the one who slots in behind Jones if Jones were to miss any time. So that in mind, you kind of have to roster him, especially if you manage Aaron Jones at all. Because Jones, we've seen more than once get beat up, and it's just rather have him than worry about it. So
yeah, absolutely. Audric Estime.
Stop it. I'm not allowing it. It's not happening, Mike.
He's taking over that backfield. Like, you can cut Javonte. I think he played less than 30% of snaps. He had like 1 carry and 2 catches.
You can also cut Audric Estime.
What's that?
You can also cut Audric Estime.
Probably. But, the Broncos, they're going to want to, they obviously don't really like that. Javonte's not in the future plans. So they probably want to see what they have in Estime. They gave him 14 carries. He's not going to catch the ball. I don't think he's going to catch the ball at all. That's probably still going to go to Javonte or McLaughlin. But he played, I think, more snaps than anyone. He was the short yardage guy. They didn't have any goal line carries, so we don't know who the goal line guy is. I assume it'd be Estime. So he's the early down guy. He's probably a touchdown or bust running back. But, when we start getting into these 6 teams on bye and you see a guy getting 15 carries, sometimes you just got to chase it a little bit. So, we'll see. I'm not a big Audric Estime fan. I don't think he's that great of a running back, but it doesn't really matter what I think if Sean Payton loves him. So,
and he's going to see that many touches. Granted, this was also a tough matchup for him. Which is, And he did okay. Yeah.
And kind of along the same lines as Gus Edwards, kind of probably a touchdown or bust guy. But we saw him come back. He got some carries and stuff. If he gets back to what he was doing the beginning of the year, which was he had 11 carries and a catch, 18 carries, and then 3 and 6, and then he got hurt. So if he gets back to a little bit more, of a 50-50 split, which I would assume they don't want to run Dobbins, out there 70% of the time. So, he averaged 5 yards a carry, I believe, in this last game. Yeah, 5.5 yards a carry for Gus Edwards. So he's going to be a touchdown or bust as well. But on a team that ideally will run the ball a lot, you could do worse.
It drives me insane because it seems like since Edwards came back, it has now dropped that passing down, and I don't like that when it comes to Herbert and fantasy value.
No, yeah,
because they want to run. It's very clear that that's what they're wanting to do.
Yeah. Well, as long as Herbert runs as part of that,
Oh yeah, he shook a couple people this week.
Yeah, and he has that in his bag. Like that's not he got lucky. Like he's rushed for 100 yards in a game. He did it in college. So, and then you mentioned it, the handcuff season, Braylon Allen, Trey Benson, Blake Corum. Keep listing them if you want. Like those are the top 3 that kind of come to mind. Plus Algier, of course. Now Cam Akers, but all those guys you want to be rostering just in case.
Well, and at this point, Trey Benson might actually just end up being a flex.
Having that job.
It's true.
Just
true.
because he's getting more of the actual handoffs, and they're using Connor more in the passing game. So it could be something that you're looking at if you are in a tough spot this week. Say you don't have your White and Irving mix. Maybe you could throw in Benson, and that could be your fix. So
yeah. No, you're right. I mean, if Benson's gonna get 2 or 3 catches, he is gonna be start worthy, even if he only gets like 8 carries or so, more so than guys like Gus Edwards or Estime. So yeah, I generally agree with that.
All right, we touched on ours. You have anybody, Steve?
Just handcuffs again along those lines. Khalil Herbert, who we talked about last week, traded at the deadline, went to Cincinnati. Zach Moss is going to be done for the year, so it's going to be the Chase Brown show, and then Herbert is going to be the backup to Brown, and then
didn't they just bring somebody else in to?
Is it Leonard Fournette?
No, I think they
were
signed
talking
Gary
about it.
Brightwell.
Yes, it was Gary Brightwell. That's
as
right.
their third guy. Yeah,
just as bad. Well, not just as bad. Fournette actually had something at one point.
right. But Herbert, we've seen in the past, he has the explosion. He's not a goal line guy. That's definitely not what he can do. But he's a good pass catcher and is shifty. So he could find himself with a role in that offense once he gets acclimated to the playbook. And then Jalen Wright. Jalen Wright's one that's available widely, I believe, in that Dolphins offense. If you can get him tonight with an open roster spot, I would do it.
Sure.
But in that offense, if something were to happen to Achane, then Wright, I think, fills that role. Mostert will continue to do what he's been doing, but it's going to be Wright that ends up being the pass catcher, getting all those RB targets if something were to happen to the main guy.
Yeah. Those are good names to bring up for sure.
Yeah, Wright's a good call for sure.
And something you can easily pick up if you had something else on buy that it's not coming back.
Right. He's under 10% rostered, so if you can get him before the game locks tonight, I would grab him.
Yeah. All right. That'll do running backs. Moving to wide receivers. And the question I have is, are we believing in a Colts wide receiver too? Outside of Downs,
believe in their wide receiver 1. Why would I want to believe in a wide receiver 2?
Yeah.
I mean, we believed in Downs, but
yeah, I would assume they're getting close to like going back to Richardson. It's like kind of like the Andy Dalton, Bryce Young thing, where it's just like he can't just not make the playoffs while starting Joe Flacco. Like I know they're going to give him probably a couple more weeks, but they lose a couple more games. It's back to Richardson. So then I'm definitely not in on any wide receiver 2, or maybe even 1 for the Colts. So, but I mean, they're worth an ad, I guess.
Yeah, because Alec Pierce is 24% rostered, and Adonai Mitchell is 10.1, and both of them got over double digits in fantasy. So,
yeah,
just crazy. Because that team is not good. All right. Well, in any case, the one that I'm more interested in, because it's been very quiet and I've liked watching him, and I think it's finally going to be time. But John Mechie, 0.8% rostered, very, very widely available. He has been playing the third wide receiver for the Texans. Kind of seems like he stepped into the Diggs role, and then Hutchinson's been filling in for Collins, and Dell's been playing his normal role. So this was the first week that we've actually seen it pay off. But as Hutchinson likely goes back to the shadows, I would expect Mechie to kind of take that role and still hang on to it because he's done so well so far. And they need somebody else. It's been made abundantly clear that if they can see what he has for one more year, now's the time to see it. And so kind of where I'm leaning. And again, it's kind of a volume play because he's right now running the third most routes. And when Collins comes back, I think it's still going to be the same thing. He's going to be running the third most routes on the team.
Yeah.
So, and then other name I'm going to bring up because talk about people who run a lot of routes and aren't getting very appreciated. Noah Brown. Commander's second wide receiver continues to be one of the highest snap players. And if they actually ever really need to throw and McLaurin gets into a tough coverage, I think Noah Brown becomes a viable asset. So,
yeah,
those are 3 I'm looking at.
I'd like the Noah Brown call. Just, he had six or more targets, or six and 7 targets the last 3 weeks. So there's some that's enough to play with, and the previous 2 weeks is 3 for 73 and a touchdown, 5 for 60. And then this last game, Pittsburgh it was a tough game for Jaden Daniels. Definitely probably his worst game since his first game, I would say. And Pittsburgh will do that too. So I like that call.
Steelers, actually a good defense.
Yeah.
They keep doing it, man. Xavier Legette, I'll bring up on a bye this week, so he might even have a larger or smaller roster percentage. And we were talking about this next week, but it's still a rookie receiver who has flashed. He had 3 touchdowns in 4 games. He's getting some targets. Bryce Young's looking a little bit better. So he had 4 targets, 3 catches, 40 yards this last week. But, I think if anyone's going to do something on that team, it's probably going to be Legette. MVS, as crazy as it sounds, but we know how much Carr loved Rashid Shaheed. And MVS is that perfect model. He's that perfect archetype, right? He fits exactly. I think Shaheed's a better receiver and stuff, but you go into a week where you're down 6 teams on bye, and it's I just need a home run shot here. You throw him in there, and he can do what he did. 3 for 109 and 2 touchdowns. So who knows? Like you mentioned before, they're thrown to no one. They're thrown to undrafted rookies and stuff. So it's all the tight ends
out there. Yeah. And Olave got put on IR, so he's going to continue to miss time. Rashid Shaheed's out. Yeah, Bub Means is on IR, so all these guys are injured. And Ricky Pearsall, another rookie receiver. Obviously, that receiving room is going to be way more crowded with Debo and Juwan Jennings and Kittle and CMC back. But I kind of feel like he had 6 targets, 4 catches, 73 yards and a touchdown. I think that's more of a product of playing Tampa Bay, but I also do think Shanahan's going to get him involved in every game. I can almost guarantee he's going to get some design touches every game, which you can't really say that for when you're diving deep for these starters. I feel pretty confident in saying at least I think he's going to get 2-3 design touches this game, and we'll see what he does with it, and plus whatever else. So just some names there. Not the greatest week for wide receivers, I would say. Trying to see if there was anyone else that I missed, but I think that was it. Yeah, and Darius Slayton, also going on a bye. Good receiver, but kind of hard to trust there.
Well, and the other half of Xavier Legette is Coker. The other name that I'm kind of interested in, he saw a good target share. He's running the second route, most routes right behind him. It's interesting, but it's really difficult to trust the Panther.
It is. It really is. But that's a good call for sure. I should have brought up Coker, and who knows? I don't think they're going to go back to Andy Dalton, especially after winning the last 2 games. But if they do, that makes those guys a little bit more intriguing.
Yeah. So, all right, Steve. Any wide receivers we're missing out on?
I'm going to throw out your guy Quentin Johnson again. He's still under 50%, just a shade under 50%. But he's the clear-cut wide receiver 1. Was on the field more than any other wide receiver for them yesterday. He's getting targeted on about 19% of his routes run. So only had 2 targets yesterday, but I think that's more of a blip than anything. I think, again, he's the guy for them. And then we talked about Drake May earlier, Demario Douglas. 5 targets again yesterday, 9 against Tennessee. In some tough matchups, he's still putting up okay numbers. Hasn't been great, nothing eye-popping yet. But they've got the Rams, Dolphins and Colts, like Mike mentioned, before their bye. And then they come out of it with the Cardinals, Bills, and Chargers. Don't love the end of it, but if you're desperate, especially in the week 14 and 12, when you've got all those buys happening at the same time, I think Douglas is an interesting ad.
No booty?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, I figured I'd bring it up because he has been making big plays, and so
he's been getting more involved in the offense, but I don't really buy that in general. Yeah. Keyshawn's been okay. Yeah. He's dealt with so many injuries throughout his whole career. It's really tough to count on him week in and week out. Whereas I know Douglas is the guy. He's running the most routes. He's on the field the most for them. So he's their wide receiver one.
Yeah, I don't mind mentioning Booty as well because I just assumed Demario Douglas was on rosters, but I guess that's if you play in shallower leagues, probably not. But
yeah, he's about 23% rostered right now.
Yeah, well, it's pretty low because nobody again. It's the same.
I mean, again, he's scored 7 or less in 4 straight games, so it's not like I can blame you, but it's more of a deep ad than anything.
Yep.
I mean, it's better than having McMillan.
Right.
So we're just throwing it out there as a name.
Yeah, not wrong.
So, all right. Well, out of wide receivers, onto the tight ends, where again, who knows?
Yep.
I am so frustrated when it comes to tight end this year. It's been impossible, but I'm going keep talking about Panthers. Going to do it again. Jatavian Sanders, 4.5% rostered, continues to be on the field, continues to be looked at, and seeing good targets. I mean, even with Bryce Young, I was kind of worried about it, but 2 decent weeks with him. It's just something you can't really get away from, unfortunately. As much as you want to. He seems to be contributing enough, being an effective player for that offense, and we'll just see how it goes.
Yeah.
Because tight end, why not?
Yeah, you're shooting a little bit for upside and stuff. So, yeah. Uncle Will, I guess is his name. I just found this out looking up stats, but Will Disley.
Yeah.
Worst nickname ever. Used, man. Yeah, it's pretty bad. I mean, but he has 3 of his last 4 games, 6 or more targets, including an 11 target game, 5 or more catches in those 3 games where he has had 6 or more targets. Not doing much with it. I mean, 5 for 30, but you'll take that in PPR. Like you'll take that happily if you're down to where you're starting Will Disley. Like you'll take 5 for 30 and be very, very happy. So, I don't think it's necessarily going to go away either. I think the tight end is it plays a role. They're going to always have tight ends out on the field because they want to throw out of their run sets and stuff like that. So, he's always going to get opportunities. I always bring up Taysom Hill's name. I know, I expected him to do a little bit more this last week. I mean, he had 2 catches for 36 yards. He also had 4 carries. Those 4 carries could easily be 50 yards, I
talked about the big play getting called back. There was a touchdown.
Oh, yeah.
It was probably 40 yards and a touchdown. So you're looking at 10 points that he should have been added right there. So,
and we talked about how down bad they are in the receivers. Like, I don't expect MVS to have 3 for 100 every game. So there's going to be a lot more opportunities to get yards and things like that. So I'll always recommend Taysom Hill. And then Dawson Knox, if Kincaid's out, we can talk about Dawson Knox again, especially against the Chiefs, who give up the 2nd most points to tight ends. That was heading into week 10. Oh, no, I think that does include week 10. So 2nd most points, they give up over 13 points a game to tight ends. So, we could see a decent Dawson Knox game if Kincaid's out. So, I assume that game's a primetime game? Is that a primetime game? No, it's not. Sunday afternoon. So that might be good. So you can make your decision, or you'll know if Kincaid's going to be out. You don't have to wait till one of these Sunday night, Monday night games. So,
Nico Collins,
God, right? Yeah,
still so salty, man. That was annoying. Why even activate him if you're just gonna not play? I don't get the Texans.
They didn't need the roster spot.
I guess
Clearly.
that's fair, but I don't know. It was a very weird situation. All right.
Yeah.
Steve, you going back to the well?
Yeah, I am gonna go back to the well. Theo Johnson.
Perfect.
I mentioned him 3 weeks ago at this point.
Yep.
I said he's running the second most tight end routes in the league behind Cade Otton. He's just not getting targets for some reason. And since then, he's had 4 targets, 6 targets, and 6 targets, and he scored a touchdown against Washington 2 weeks ago. He has not had less than 3 receptions or 35 yards in those last 3 games. So a minimum of 6.5 points over your last 3 weeks. Not a spectacular ceiling, but he certainly builds in a floor for you. And they're going into the bye in week 11. So he's already widely available. He'll definitely be available after this week. You can pick him up at any point in time before Monday for free, as long as you got a roster spot. And I think he's going to be a lot more involved in that offense coming out of the bye. And they're playing the number 1 easiest tight end schedule the rest of the season, weeks 12 through 18. Tampa, Dallas, New Orleans, Baltimore, Atlanta, Indy. Nothing but top tier matchups. Like the worst matchup they got is New Orleans. I think they're like 18th on the list for tight end points. And that's the worst matchup he has. They've got 3 matchups in the top 5. So he's running the routes. He's getting more involved. I think he's got a solid shot to do something for you the rest of the way.
And with Drew Lock throwing him the ball too. So
right, exactly.
That was the next thing I was going to bring up. Do we think they make the quarterback change coming out of the bye?
I think so.
They have
very non-committal.
Yeah, and they have that injury clause thing that people have been talking about. Like that's what Derek was it Derek Carr?
Russell Wilson.
It was Russell Wilson. Then was it Carr before that? It was 2 because Jarrett Stidham did it back-to-back years. He was the guy that replaced both of them, and I want to say it was Carr or Garoppolo or something.
Yeah,
I don't remember, but that's a huge incentive for them when they don't think they're going to make the playoffs to bench Daniel Jones. So
right, you don't have to pay him.
Yeah,
right. You don't really want to.
Right,
that was a big contract for somebody who
could have seen that was a bad idea. Oh God, if only anyone could have warned them.
Jesus.
Like
anybody with eyeballs. Yeah.
Literally everyone said that's a bad idea.
And they're going to screw up that. They're not going to get the number 1 pick. They're going to screw it up. No. I already know it.
No.
Because they're going to start Drew Lock.
Right?
Yeah, right.
And he's just going to sling it because he sees neighbors running down the field with his hand up.
They're going to start Drew Lock and win games accidentally and get right back to that 8 or 9 pick.
Yeah.
Do what they do best. Don't worry. They'll pay Justin Fields $45 million a season in the offseason.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's brutal. But yeah. Okay. All right. Enough dilly-dallying into defenses because it's another tough week when it comes to looking at defenses. The only one I really like that's available, Houston, Texas, 38.9% rostered. They get to face the Cowboys without Dak. We just saw how Cooper Rush did with him under center and then also splitting with Trey Lance. Maybe it's going to be Trey Lance. Either way, not too worried about it. For their 10 weeks, they've hit double-digit scoring for defense. Pretty solid. And they haven't been scored a negative point yet when it comes to their defense. So against the Cowboys, who we've seen struggle, I don't think that really changes. So I think Texans are a safe play for you.
Mike, I just want to preemptively thank you so that I don't have to say it, so that I can just hold in the vomit and it doesn't have to come out of my mouth. I appreciate it.
I specifically ignored this one because I'm like, nope, I'm not trusting that.
Thank you.
But go for it, Mike. Let them know.
Go ahead.
Which side are you talking about? Because I'm saying start the Bears defense now. I mean, Packers versus the Bears. Like, Bears have been horrendous.
I mean, I would start the Bears defense, but they're 75% roster as they should be. So I have no problem with that side of it. It's the other side that makes me queasy inside.
Yeah. No,
makes
I get
everything
it.
sad.
I get it. But
hey, but you know what? Still greatest rookie quarterback season in franchise history because we're the best.
Yeah, they're just breaking
He
Williams.
is not breaking. He is shattering records for this franchise as a rookie, and they have sucked. It has been
he's
trash.
also going to be the most sacked. He's going for it, baby.
Oh yeah, he's going to crush that record too.
Yeah, pretty bad.
He's already 7 ahead. He's doing it.
Packers are the 4th best defense heading into Week 10. I know they were on a bye, but yeah, I mean, again, Bears has just been terrible. Like it's pretty simple. And
the Bears' offense has been terrible.
Yes,
fix that a little bit.
Well, defense has been hurt too, so they haven't been great the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. I also don't mind the Dolphins against the Raiders because Raiders give up a lot of points, the second most points to defenses. So I don't mind that one either, but it's not a great one. I also don't mind if like someone wants to drop like the Chiefs because they're playing the Bills. I'll happily pick them up. I don't think that's going to happen. For just look out for these. There's some good defenses playing some good offenses. Chargers playing the Bengals, Steelers playing the Ravens, and the Chiefs playing the Bills, or vice versa. Bills playing Chiefs, and I don't mind picking those guys up. A couple of them I wouldn't even mind starting. I don't even mind starting the Bills or the Chiefs defense. I don't think people are going to be dropping the Bills defense, but I don't know about the Steelers against the Ravens and the Chargers versus the Bengals, but for future weeks, if you don't need a defense till next week or 2 weeks down the line, there's might be some good defenses on the waiver wire.
Yeah. That's the other thing is you have to also see who's being dropped because you could pick somebody up who is not going to be good this week, but if you've trimmed the fat off of your roster, you're able to kind of pick up and hold that for the next week. So other things to be kind of thinking about strategically and getting yourself positioned to be in the right spot. So,
yeah.
All right. Well,
I'm going to just piggyback off of you there, Nerd Man.
All right.
Because not only do the Texans get the Cowboys this week and the disaster that is currently, but the week after they also fulfill my anyone against the Titans prophecy. So you've got 2 streaming weeks in a row that you can use Houston back to back. And then right after that, it's a divisional game, but it's Jacksonville. I mean, it feels like 3 layups in a row, right?
Maybe
they have a bye in week 14, but that's pretty solid. I mean, you can't complain about that.
Yeah,
Titans already scored.
Mike's already into the game. Oh man, this is going to be great.
Washington, jeez, no one we care about.
Yeah, but yeah, it's going to be interesting, for sure. At this point, we'll see how the rest of these teams do because there could be changes, and that's terrifying to think about as well. We've kind of theoretically have been talking about it, but Jonathan Brooks. When's that going to start coming? Because
after the bye.
Yeah, it wasn't active this week, right?
He was inactive. This was the week that he finished his 21-day window. So he's been practicing for 3 straight weeks. They sat him this week specifically because they're going into their bye. So they didn't see a point in playing him 1 game, having the bye, and then coming out of the bye, playing him again. So when they come out of the bye, he will be worked in. He will be playing. He will have a role. What exactly the size of that role is, we don't know.
Yeah.
But I would think it's a 60-40 with Chuba. And it's Chuba's 60 for the beginning. But we'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, I was much more excited about Brooks before they signed Chuba. Now they don't, I thought maybe they just kind of like full on go to Brooks to see what they have for the last 4 weeks, but that's not happening because Chuba's been really good and he's in their future plan. So yeah, I think 60-40 sounds pretty good. Maybe not until like fantasy playoffs or something, but I don't expect anything. You're always a week out with him. You have to see a good game before you even think about starting him, or at least good usage. So,
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we kind of talked about Daniel Jones too, but the other name that if you're just it's a deep league and you're in trouble, Will Levis has another good playoff schedule. Just bringing it up. I think he's quarterback 9 on the week right now. Scored 19 fantasy points. Like, you don't want to,
right?
But him and Ridley, I mean, he's going to see the targets. They both are being effective at this point. And if Ridley they finally realize that without Hopkins, just feed Ridley the ball and he'll do something with it. Could be something to just look at. But that's very tentative. I'm very nervous on doing that. I'm just bringing it up for the sake of conversation. But all right, we are going to let you guys go. Go enjoy the game. Again, forgot to mention this. Thank you to all those served and who have served, are serving.
Yes, happy Veterans Day. It's
Veterans Day, so just wanted to make sure, to really show that we appreciate you all. And yeah, so in that case, good luck. Enjoy the game tonight. And remember, as always, to keep up the nonsense.